Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, did a woefully inaccurate government report contribute to the next recession? I'm David Ravel. Well, the United States has the most extensive financial system in the world, a system that is increasingly delicate. This is because of tremendous amount of leverage that we're carrying. At every level, government, corporate, and individual, we've piled on the debt to levels never seen before. This leverage makes it imperative that the Federal Reserve's moves in setting interest rates be precise and measured. If the Fed positions interest rates too low, as likely occurred immediately following the 2020 pandemic, the results will most often be inflation, as we saw. However, the other side of the coin is that if the Fed holds interest rates too high for too long, it will likely cause the economy to slow and, at the extreme, to go into recession. Now, the Fed has the largest, most well-funded economic research staff around. At last count, more than 900 PhDs, laboring to ensure that the board has the best, most up-to-date picture of the American economy. However, as anyone who has ever worked in a large organization will tell you, there's data and then there's data. Some information is much more important than others. For the Federal Reserve, two pieces of data precede all the rest, and those are inflation and the labor market. And it isn't some whim of the Federal Reserve, but part of the Fed's mandate from Congress. As we've discussed before, on October 27, 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed into law what was called the Humphrey-Hawkins Bill, or more accurately, the Full Employment and Balanced Growth Act. This law says that the Fed must strive for an economy of stable prices and full employment. And this is no easy task. Over the years, the precise level of employment and inflation have been adjusted to meet the changing dynamics of the country. Today, it's fair to say that the Fed considers full employment to exist when unemployment rate is 4% or low. And stable prices exist when inflation is 2% or lower. That's the Fed's stated target. So that's the Fed's standards, the goals they must look to before anything else is considered. This is also why Fed Chairman Jerome Powell begins each and every speech referring to the twin mandates. It's no accident or coincidence. It's Powell's way of saying, okay, here's where we're achieving our most important objectives. Now, it took about a year, but after the country emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic, things settled down for the American workers. By December of 2021, the nation's unemployment rate ticked below 4%, where it has remained essentially ever since. Clearly, the Fed did not need to worry about full employment, that part of the mandate. However, inflation was another kettle of fish entirely. As we all know, inflation has been on a rampage since the pandemic. In 2021, CPI inflation roared at 4.6%, double the Fed's 2% target. And then it doubled again in 2022 to an incredible 7.99%, the highest inflation rate in over 40 years. The Fed had a real crisis on its hand, and it was inflation. It followed that the Fed has been fighting inflation for more than 2 years, assuming that employment was okay. After moving interest rates to better than 5% in May of 2023, the Fed has kept interest rates high, all to curb inflation by slowing an overheated economy. They felt comfortable in taking this action because the Bureau of Labor Statistics told them month after month that the American economy was adding new jobs and that unemployment held steady. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that in the 12 months ending March of 2024, the economy created 2.9 million new jobs. You probably heard President Biden and the other members of the cabinet extol all the latest jobs they've created. Unfortunately, it simply was not true. The number of new jobs was overstated by 818,000. That's a 28% error. The Bureau claimed that the population model was off, and it contributed dramatically to this overstatement. And we're left to wonder whether something more sinister, however, was at work here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has long been considered one of the most politicized government agencies. And this being an election year, was there a political motivation behind this inflation of the number of employed? We do know that through March, the BLS has restated the nation's number of new jobs lower by over 800,000. But what of the intervening 6 months until now? There's been no update from the BLS. The Fed quickly adjusted its own employment numbers and may have found that the country's employment picture was much, much weaker than they earlier supposed. This is why the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates by 50 basis points, double the level that Wall Street had expected. And if you follow the logic, it's easy to conclude that the next recession is much closer because the Fed held interest rates too high for too long. Tight monetary policy was due to faulty employment numbers, which suggested that the labor economy was much, much stronger than reality. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles and references, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. Value Side is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.